Hello, class. Today we have a special lesson on DC Universe Classics Wave 12, figure number 7, Iron. Now, before I go too much further, I always want to call this guy Steel, but that would make him Shaq. And I think the reason I keep wanting to call Iron Steel is because Steel's real name was John Henry Irons before it became the Chick. And I think that's why I keep screwing it up. So, if I, instead of saying Iron, which is what it says there, I say Steel, that's why. So don't jump all over me about that. Anyways, we're going to have a look at the figure. First we've got the packaging. We can see the collector's button on there. And more importantly, it has die-cast parts, which I will come back to as we look at the figure itself. It comes with a collect and connect piece. If you look here on the back, there we've got a picture of Iron and a biography. Professor Will Magnus invented the responsometer, a microcomputer capable of imbuing pure elements with a semblance of life, intelligence, and emotion. Implanting samples of gold, iron, lead, tin, and mercury with their own responsometers, Magnus watched the metals take on humanoid shape and personalities. Iron quickly emerged as the backbone of the team. In all the challenges the metal men take on, Iron's super strength and ability to withstand tremendous punishment put him on the front line of action. So he's a tank. He just takes a whooping. His first appearance was in Showcase number 37 back in 1962. His name is Iron. His occupation is member of the Metal Men. His base of operations is Magnus Labs, and his special abilities is that he's super strong, able to assume unlimited shapes, which is why we've got the adjustable wrench there. And some of the other figures in this wave, we have Eclipso, the Spectre, Copperhead, Dr. Midnight, still I think that's spelt funny, Desaad, Mary Batson, and of course Iron. And then we can put together all the pieces that come together and we can build Darkseid, which is going to be awesome. If we keep looking there, more or less same thing on the other side. That's our look at the packaging for Iron, so I think maybe what we'll do is we'll take a short break and we'll open this figure up and we'll have a closer look at the figure. Back in a sec. Okay, we're back. We are still looking at Iron, and I'll give you a quick 360-degree view of the figure here. Now, in terms of what I can tell you about the character, besides what we read in the bio, what I can tell you, I have two answers. One, nothing, and a longer answer, absolutely nothing. Don't know nothing about the Metal Men, didn't even know about them until I saw the DCUC figures. And I'm not really a big fan of them, so I really couldn't tell you anything about the characters themselves. But we can talk about the figure here we have here. Let's start off with the mold. I mean, now again, most DCUC figures, we're going to see certain commonalities, right? We're going to see that the arms are basically all exactly the same. Most of the legs are. We've got a little bit of different detail in the boots, and look at that, he's got little heels. Isn't that cute? And of course, his chest piece is different because it's got an extra piece, it looks like, put on top of it to make that little, it almost looks like he's wearing like a tunic. Now his face, you know what, doesn't look too bad. He looks like a dude who's, he doesn't really look pissed off, but he doesn't really look happy either. I guess he's kind of neutral right now. And we can see the, I guess that's the symbol for Iron that's stamped on his forehead. I'm not too up on my periodic elements symbols, so I'm guessing that's what it is. He's even got ears, which not all DCU figures seem to have. But there we've got ears, which is awesome. I mean, if you're going to turn into a living piece of metal, you definitely got to have your ears, because then you can listen to people bitch at you, and we need to have that. The tunic itself, I like the fact that you can see the rivets, and he's got that, you know, on the arm guards, and then along his boots. I think that's a really nice fact. It looks like it's been stamped or bolted onto him. The rest for the mold, there's really not too much to talk about. I mean, the back is a little bit different because he's got this extra piece, but the one thing that's nice, and it's partly because of the paint and it's partly, I think, from the mold, is that we can see little bits that have been gouged out. Like, he looks like he's seen a few battles at this point. He's not, well, he's shiny, but he's obviously not new. He's been thumped a few times, which is kind of cool. Now, in terms of the paint, or the coloring, he is kind of a metallic blue, a darker color, which isn't too bad. I'm not sure if I would say that's the color I think of when I think of Iron, but I guess that's okay. But he is shiny, which is nice. And it has, again, that kind of weathered, grungy look, which is pretty good. And really, the whole figure is just one color, which I guess must have been really easy when they were painting it, because they just slapped one color on. I suppose they did some of the detail work as well, just to make sure that we could get a little bit of musculature on them and stuff. But for the most part, it looks like they just did a base coat and then some of the highlights and then some of the extra dry brushing. Not a lot going on there, which is okay, because I think that's really the color he's supposed to be. I don't think there's supposed to be a whole lot of color to any of the metal men, really, besides what their element is supposed to be. So there we have him. Now, in terms of his accessories, we'll talk about the die-cast parts in a second, because actually I do think it is a little bit deceptive. But if we talk about the accessories, I guess the first things we should talk about are the weapons that he comes with. First of all, he has the adjustable wrench, which I honestly, if I was in the middle of a heated battle, I would not be making an adjustable wrench. Like, if you want to make a tool, make a hammer. You know, a bludgeon. Like, when I look for weapons for smashing things, this is usually not the first thing I'm looking for. I mean, in a pinch, you could probably reef someone's skull with it, but I can probably find better things, even where I live. Anyways, so what we can do is we can just pop that on over his hand, which looks really silly when he looks like that, and it doesn't look as, whoa, doesn't look as bad when we turn it obviously facing forward. But the thing I don't like about it is we can see they angled it funny so you could fit his hand in. Like, really, it adjusts, what, a 30-degree angle-ish? And so it looks like it's bent all the time. And actually, that really annoys the hell out of me. It bothers me a great deal. I don't know why they couldn't have just made this part maybe a little bit bigger and just have the thing go straight instead of being on a stupid angle. It is nice that the adjustable wrench does adjust. That's kind of cool. What I might use that for, I don't know, because it's not like you could actually use it to adjust anything. So in terms of this accessory, I mean, it looks cool, the same kind of paint job and the level of detail and the fact that it actually moves is kind of nice, but this bit where it attaches to his hand, I just think is kind of silly. So yeah, forget that. That's going to end up in a bottom of a bag or a box or a bin somewhere to be forgotten about. The flail, or the ball and chain, or whatever we want to call it, or it's kind of like a wrecking ball. This one I actually like a lot better. So again, we can just slip that over his hand. Now again, if we face out, we can still see it, which is kind of but it's not as hard to cover up, because it does go over his hand instead of just attaching to it on the side. And I have to say, I do like this accessory. Again, the mold and the paint and the color, you know, if we look at this thing has seen a few battles. Which kind of makes me wonder, does that mean that every time he forms a new object, it takes on the same properties and beatings the last time? Like, has he made the form of a flail or this ball and chain like 18,000 times and it still has those bits in it? Like, why isn't it smooth? Why isn't it nice and new every time he creates a new one? Just saying. But it is nice. It does have metal parts. There's a ring here which attaches to the hand, and a ring here that attaches to the ball, which I guess is the metal parts, at least for this accessory. We'll talk about the rest in a second. But the main thing that's nice about this, now some people might say it's cheap, but this thing is hollow. You could bust this thing probably like an egg, okay? And so you're thinking, oh, that's a cheap, it's a piece of crap. But there's one reason that it is actually good. Because it's hollow and it weighs next to nothing, it doesn't unbalance the figure when he has it. Because I've seen figures that have like the larger weapons or the flail weapons that it literally just overbalances them, because there's so much weight in this thing that's hanging out away from the center of the body. But this one is not like that, because it weighs next to nothing. That is kind of nice. It means having him wield this thing is not going to be too unwieldy. It's not going to make him fall down. So I do like that. I like this thing. This thing's actually kind of cool. And I'm wondering if it could fit on other figures. And I may have to try that at some point, because, you know, iron is kind of crappy, but there's other figures that could use a ball and chain thing to beat the crap out of other dudes with. So I do like that. Now if we set him back for a second. Oh, I gotta talk about one other thing about the figure. I'm sorry. Let's get rid of this. So it said die-cast parts, which is, you know, die-cast metal, unless that means something that I'm not aware of. And for those of us who grew up in the 80s, we remember the original Transformers that had die-cast parts, and then more recently, if you were a Transformers fan, you remember the Titanium series of Transformers figures, which also had die-cast parts. And we can usually tell them because they're heavier and they're loose, and they don't sit as well. I had a really difficult time finding the die-cast parts on iron. I ran a magnet over them, a pretty powerful one, and it didn't stick anywhere. However, while we're filming this, it is the summer, and I have the AC cranked. The wife is freezing, and she's probably getting pissed off at me about it. And the only way I can tell what are the die-cast parts is that the hands on this figure feel cold. None of the rest of the figure feels particularly cold, but the hands do, which to me is what's telling me that they're metal. And they also feel different, and they really are tight in the joint there. So I think the die-cast parts are his fists. Now, if somebody wants to correct me on that, they've, you know, figured out a better way, or they're an expert on identifying metals and stuff, they can tell me, but I'm pretty sure these are the die-cast parts, his fists, and I think that's really about it. So, a little bit deceptive. I was expecting maybe something a little bit more, but, you know, it's not too bad. Now, in terms of his other accessories, we have a button, which shows a bunch of dudes fighting a robot, and, whatever. I don't really have anything else to say about that. And also, we have a leg of Darkseid. Now, we're not going to spend too much time talking about this, because eventually we're going to put Darkseid together. But, I mean, it's a nice little leg and boot with the knee pad things over his knees. I don't know why Darkseid needs that, but... And that leads to dirty jokes, so I'm not going to get into that, but it's got the leg of Darkseid. And there we have it. So, what kind of grade would I give to Iron? You know what? We didn't cover the articulation. Nuts. And you know what? I'm not going to. It's got more or less standard DC-UC articulation, except the legs don't move as much because of his tunic here. If I was to give a grade to this figure, you know what? I'd give it a B. It's not a bad figure. It's not a great figure. I like one of his accessories. The die-cast bits, it's a little bit deceptive, but it's not bad. So the figure gets a B. I think that's really about all I have for Iron. So, thank you very much, and class is dismissed.